Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Practical Ideas for Growth. Welcome, Katie. So happy to have you here.
Hi there. Glad to be back.
We are so excited for you to be back and to be talking a little bit today about going to events. We know that quarantine days are long over and everyone's expecting a big year of travel with events, and it's the perfect time to really just kick off event marketing. And one of the things we just saw in our 2022-23 growth outlook survey for CPA firms is that investments in these networking events and in-person events was going back up and going to be an integral part of the 2023 budget. So, Katie, I know this is kind of your area of expertise and where you really work with firms. So tell me, if somebody is going back to these in-person events, if they're reinvesting and prioritizing all of this, but maybe feeling a little bit rusty, what are some of the things they should be thinking about in order to make the most of this?
Yeah, sure. We've been helping a lot of firms with their event promotion lately. I've been hearing a lot of comments and actually a lot of frustrations from the event organizers that event attendance numbers are down. And listen, I love event planning. As an event organizer, I can vouch that one of your worst fears is planning an event and having bad turnout. Like that is the ultimate fear of an event organizer. So when you could hear frustrations like this and reports of event attendance numbers being down, it's really scary. So we've been helping a lot of firms, as I mentioned, with this problem. And I want to say there are some things that you could do on the forefront to really help your event attendance. And there's a lot of things you could do, but I would say just to start off and to focus on a couple key areas, I would look at your event timing.
Okay.
I would look at, are you articulating good reasons for people to attend? And you can do that in a number of ways. Do you have a plan in place to reach these people? How are you reaching your audience? And then finally, setting some really strategic goals and KPIs. So I would say those are the four areas I would start. And we could dive into each one of those into more detail, but those are the four overarching areas.
Yeah, I can't imagine that type of stress of like, oh my gosh, you put your heart and soul into something and then oh my gosh, is anybody going to show up? But it's funny that you talk about some of these KPIs and goals and how do we get people there and everything, because actually I had a conversation with a marketer and accounting firm last year, and it just happened to be I think it was at or after the AIM summit, and we were talking about, she was like, I'm hosting another event. This is the one where we typically get the most business out of, but I'm getting a little pushback on hosting this because, we're not really fully back, and they're trying to have me make a business case for why we should do it. And it was funny because I said, well, how many people do you need there for it to be a success? And she goes, I don't really know. And I go, what do you
Mm,
mean you don't know? I said, how many people do you invite? And we're like, she said, well, we just let, the professionals invite people. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it you're wanting to get out of this? And they're like, well, new business. And we kind of backed into this. And she goes, I'm not doing this right. She goes, I have not, she was like, we've been having it and we've always had such good success and we never really questioned why. It just worked. And so we had a very similar conversation to this last year around like, how do we set goals? What should we be looking for in terms of getting people there? So you said timing was the first one. So why is timing so critical and how does it impact attendance?
yeah, sure. So that is the number one place to start. And you need to start that early, obviously, because it influences everything else. But you want to think about it from the perspective of your audience, because at the end of the day, they're taking time out of their workday or they're taking time away from their family or their personal life to attend your event. So it needs to be in their convenience and their benefit to attend. So you have to put yourself into their shoes and consider things like date, time, location. I used to be heavily involved in association events, and there were always dates that we absolutely avoided because we knew our audience was not going to be able to attend because of deadlines or conflicting other industry conferences. So I would say get out a calendar, and look at other industry conferences that are competing with your event. Also think about your audience. Are they at the age where they might have kids graduating from high school or college? Okay, if that's the case, maybe you should not be hosting this event that second, third week of May. Um, Holidays, Super Bowl, like look at your calendar. There's so many holidays, deadlines, due dates that can conflict. So think about that. Think about time zones. Think about location. All of these things, having the wrong location, time, or date, you're already just setting yourself up for a battle for attendance.
I I have to giggle at this because I still remember it's a personal thing too, right?
Hmm.
We all did this in our personal lives. I still remember when I first got engaged a long time ago. We're not going to talk about this, but I live in Kentucky, and so football, basketball, all that kind of stuff is really big down here. And I still remember we got out the calendar. We wanted to get married in the fall, and I'm looking at dates, and I'm like, "What about this?" And my now husband goes, we can't set a date yet. The football calendar's not out yet. And I was like, are you serious? And so we actually waited until the football schedule came out, and we were looking for a bye week, wasn't available. So we did it on an away game against a team that we knew we'd always beat. So I'm like, we do it all the time in our personal life. We look at, timing and everything else. So it makes sense that you would want to do that for a business event too.
Yeah.
If firms are looking at like trying to get people to come together for more like a short networking event, maybe not like a huge event. Is there a better time of day that you've seen for that to work, or what do you recommend there? Happy hour, lunch, during the day, after hours?
I would say during, it varies. There's so many considerations and factors, but I'm saying if it's for a work event and your audience is business professionals, I would say, during work hours could work well. I do think it's hard after work hours to get people to commit. I've seen a lot of people struggle with after work hours going back out to an event because they have other commitments, other things going on.
Yeah.
I don't think it's also a bad idea to poll your attendees. Ask
Oh,
them, maybe when's a good time? Survey them, and if they choose it, they're more likely to show up.
that's a great idea. I like that. One of the other things you mentioned around the timing was also getting a compelling reason for them to attend. Why should they come? So, how do you figure that out, and how do you communicate it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways you could do this. So one of them being the agenda, the invites, having a strategic campaign for social media or email marketing. All of these different channels, you want to have really articulate messaging and compelling messaging to make sure that you're communicating the benefit of attending. Because again, put yourself into their shoes. What would make you take time out of your day or away from your family to spend a few hours at this event? So it needs to be communicated through these promotional materials like the agenda, the invite, social media posts, the e-blast. So there's a lot of different channels that you can compel your message through, but you got to make sure that you have that compelling reason to attend. I can't tell you how many times I've seen just like an event title, a
Yeah.
date, a location, there's no other details. You've got to have the details. Who's speaking? What are they going to learn? Why should I attend? All of that information is really important.
So, how do we get this message out? You talk about you've got to have specific strategies to reach your audience. I know you said emails, you said social, you said all these different ways. How do you go about helping firms or helping people you work with get people to an event?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the strategy is going to look different depending on the event, but the best strategy is going to be a blend of different tactics. You can't just mail out an invite and pray and sit back that the registrations roll through.
Yeah.
You really need to take a look at your data. First of all, what data do you have access to? Do you have email addresses? Do you have accurate, tangible physical addresses? Do you have phone numbers? What do you have access to? And leverage that. So the mailed invite is great, but you can't rely on that only. You have your email addresses, so you could do mailed e-blasts, mailed invites. You can do save the dates. You could do if you don't have email addresses or you don't have addresses, you could do a social media campaign to a certain audience. And don't be afraid to go back to good old personal calling. If you have phone numbers, pick up the phone and give them a call. Hey, did you get the invite? I think that goes a long way too.
Yeah. It, it, I think they say it takes like 7 different times before someone sees something, whether it's through social media or email, or before they pay attention to it, right? And I think so many people think, well, I don't want to overwhelm people and I don't want to, feel like I'm blasting them too much. So they might make like 1 or 2 social posts and they might send 1 email, but those things get lost. So I do think you're right, like having an amount of time where you're trying to hit them from different angles that one way is going to catch them, probably not all of them, right? And so I think that's an important thing to consider. And, I always recommend too, it's so funny. I was helping with a conference in 2020, and it was one of the conferences that pivoted from an all in-person thing to a virtual one. And I was on this committee, and they're like, we got to get registrations up, people. We don't have enough people to cover this, blah, blah. And so all of us kind of took a list of everyone that had attended the in-person event, in years prior, and we split it up and did outreach. Well, I thought, oh, everybody's getting so many emails right now because how many emails we were getting in 2020. Like that was crazy. And so I thought, what can we do? And I had seen this application. There's all kinds of different ones out there now, but I think it was called BombBomb, and I used a trial for a week, and it was actually it was a video integration into email. And so I'd seen somebody else try it, and I thought, I'll give it a go on this. And so it integrated like with your email, and every time I'd pull up the list, I'd be like, okay, I've got to email Katie. So I pull up the email and I'd hit record and I'd go, hey, Katie, hope everything's going well. I know that you attended blah, blah, blah in previous years. This year is going to be an all virtual conference. I'd love for you to be there, blah, blah, blah. And as quickly as I said that, right, is as quick as I could type it. And I sent those out via email, and I got such a better response rate, just from having those emails, because it popped up in their email and they could tell it was personalized because I didn't say, hey, you, I'd love to see you there. I said, hey, Katie. And it was just really interesting to see. I think you have to have kind of the awareness through all the social media and the email and the agendas and physical mail and everything else that you're doing. But to your point, if you really want to make an impact, just do some personal outreach, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a big piece of it. But it was fun. It wasn't that hard. And I don't know why I don't still do it, but that's just a little food for thought there. I don't know. Have you ever used any type of video stuff like that?
I have seen the technology for it. I think it's great. It's genuine and it's going to help you stand out. I think it's manageable, like you said, if you have a succinct list of people that you really want to invite. But if you have a really large list, I could see where that would be tough to do. But, if you have your key list of people that you really hope to see there, absolutely try that.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of getting people there, setting goals. And like I said, this is something that the individual I talked to was like, I mean, we never really thought of it. We always had good attendance. So we never figured out what our goals were. So how do you go about setting a goal for attendance, and what should that look like?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, Ty, because similar to your situation, I also hear that often there is no goal. You need to have one. How many people do you want to this event? Because your invite list needs to allow for that. So, for example, a good rule of thumb that we like to follow at Innovatus is if you want, let's say, 25 people to attend your event, your invite list should have at least 1,000 on that list. Because if you're only inviting 25 people, but you want 25 to attend, that's going to be really tough. So you need to make sure that your invite list can support your goal. So you want to make sure they're achievable.
Yeah. And how do you go about figuring out how many people you want there, right? So 25, like that's a great number, but do you ever look at like how many new clients it would take out of that event to cover the cost or anything like that? Because I know that was one of the things that they were looking at is, out of this whole group of prospects, over the next year, we want to bring like 3 of them on. And so we tried to back into some bigger numbers like that. And, to your point, if you've got 3 people if you got 5 people there and you really need to try to convert 3 of those into clients in the next year, you probably don't have enough, right?
Yeah.
If that's the goal there too. So I think it goes both ways. Okay. Well, so talking about attendance goals, what other goals should people set for these events?
Yeah, so you have your attendance goal, that's great, but you also want to set some goals so that it helps you stay on track with, how you're promoting the event. So
Yep.
you have your attendance goal, but also have some goals around like, how many media placements are you hoping to get if you're going to send out press releases? So maybe you're hoping 1 or 2 local publications pick it up. How many people do you want to visit your landing page if you're setting up an event landing page? Or, how many leads generated or prospects registered are you looking for? Or how many social media impressions? There are so many different goals and KPIs we could be looking at. The list doesn't stop there. Those are just a few ones that I would suggest starting with.
I like that. I like it. Well, time is just flying by. We're almost at the end of our time together. So any final thoughts or nuggets that you want to share with our audience as we go into these event and conference seasons?
I would just say, technology is great. Definitely embrace it and leverage it, but also don't be afraid to go back to your basics with the good old phone call and press releases. Don't forget about those basic things too.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Katie. This was great. I learned a few things from you today. As always, a pleasure to talk and fun. So thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll get to do this again soon.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Ty.